Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of r/ProRevenge. My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to bringing you guys today's top stories. Before I do though, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you got notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. Bakery had my mom's car towed, so I got the business closed down. This happened about 8 years ago, 2013, and when I tell people the story, I get mixed reactions. So I figured, why not tell Reddit? My mom and I decided to go out to lunch one day. We drove until we found a lot that's business did not appear to be open at the time. My mom pulls into the lot and parks in a spot. We both walk over and investigate the business's window. It was a pastry shop for purposes later in the story. The lights are not on, the door is locked, and there's a sign that says closed right behind the door. We conclude that they're closed and went to eat our lunch. We finish eating about a little over an hour later and come back to find our car was missing, but now the bakery was open. My mom and I walk inside the bakery and ask if they had seen our car. The owner, with a very stern tone and attitude, said, "Yeah, I had it towed because it was taking up spots for potential customers. You should have come inside to ask me first." My mom responds that we did attempt to see if they were open and even buy something if we could park there for an hour or so. She calls us liars and said she had been practically open all day and we never attempted to ask. My mom basically said we tried and that it was wrong for her to tow us with so many other spots still available. The owner said something back to my mom that really upset her and made her cry. All the while that this was going on, I was taking mental notes that this bakery/pastry shop was having ventilation and insulation work being done. The insulation worker, who I can only assume was a random contractor and not a specialist, was doing the work right over the prep table for the food, all while smoking a cigarette. As I go to console my mom, I turn around and tell the lady her sign still says closed like when we originally came to the door. She storms up to me, picks up the sign, and slams it around to open. "We are open now!" I calmed my mom down, and we eventually got back to the car from the tow company and went home. Once we got home, I was angry that that lady made my mom cry, so I wanted revenge. I called the health department for the city. I say exactly what I wrote above to the guy on the phone who puts me on hold and tells me to repeat everything I said word for word to his director. I tell the director the story, nothing about the car being towed obviously, I was just a concerned citizen, and she verifies the address and location with me 3 separate times. Yes, the name was X. Yes, it was across the street from this restaurant on this street. She then tells me that she shut down that business the week prior for plumbing issues, insulation, and multiple other infractions. She was told she could not handle it. Later that night on the news, the business was being shut down for good for all of the infractions, and I could see my mom looked super confused and happy at the same time, like karma worked for her that quickly. Told my mom years later and she loved it. X yelled, had a temper tantrum about child support at his job, and blamed me in court for it. The next time I had to go to his work, he regretted it. My friend said to post it here. My ex is an abusive pile of crap, and we had a kid together. I left him while I was pregnant, but I'd take the baby to see him on his lunch hour occasionally. He paid $29 US a month in child support for a very long time. I got it reviewed when he got that job, and it went to $89 a month. When he found out how much it went up, he threw a screaming temper tantrum in his work and chased me out of the building with our 9-month-old. We had a family court a few days later, and he blamed me for everything. He even got his friend to lie and say he was there and I started it. The judge thankfully didn't believe him, but I was told to continue these terrible visits at his work. Now for the revenge. It was a furniture rental store, and he would constantly badmouth customers in very detailed ways. The next, and last time I took my baby there, I sat down with a small notepad and wrote down the names he and the other person said, how many months they said they were behind, how much they said they owed, and every name he and his buddy called every single person. There were quite a few racial slurs said that day. When time was up, he had to leave, and I told his boss. The boss didn't do a damn thing. I knew 3 people he was badmouthing, and I knew how to get in touch with 5 or so others. I worked my way through that list, telling people exactly how their personal financial info was being released and the names they were called. He and his buddy lost their jobs the next day, and the owner filed a restraining order against them. I don't feel bad at all. Edit. I'm on mobile and I have no idea how to format. This happened almost 20 years ago, so my child is safe and an adult now. I haven't made my way through all the comments, but I'm not a psycho. I went to his work because I was told by the mediator on the days I had time. I'd sit as far away from him as possible and read for school. This was the arrangement we had agreed on, and it had worked for several visits before that day. The boss didn't do anything because they were friends. How did I make it out without getting almost no support? I worked 2 jobs, one of which I could take my kiddo with me to for most of the time. My friends and family were very helpful. I did it all because I had to. Edit 2. I forgot to include that as unintentional effect, this was a final straw that got the store closed down. People called corporate to complain. It was in our local paper and in our local news. One-party consent recordings, the kryptonite of asshole supervisors. I'm a paramedic, and after many years of working regular ground ambulance, I decided I had enough. My whole career, I was either a glorified Uber driver, being spit on by drunks, bit by meth heads, or chauffeuring people between hospitals, though once in a blue moon I saved a life. And there isn't a lot of jobs you can parlay an EMS career into, so I elected to move into the private sector and got a job basically doing the same thing as mine in a remote environment. Worked 2 weeks straight with 2 weeks off, less stress, and an enviable salary. On the surface, it was a sweet gig, almost heaven compared to the regular stretcher jockey job I came out from, and it would have been such if not for the absolute psychopath who managed the EMS services out there. I didn't work directly from the mine's operator. Instead, I was employed by a contractor. The coordinator, my local boss, as he was called, was a golden boy as far as the mine co was concerned. There wasn't an ass he didn't kiss or bigwig he wouldn't suck up to. And I admit he could be charming and quite adept at impersonating a human being, actually. It wasn't long before I discovered he reserved decency for everyone but his subordinates. His behavior started out as petty micromanaging, which was irritating, but then progressed to insults, put-downs, name-calling, like, "Hey dumbass," and outright hostility. The man clearly enjoyed being a small-time workplace despo, and he knew he could get away with it because of his reputation with our paymasters. It was around the 2-month mark before I really warmed up to my coworkers. There were 8 of us, including myself and the dipshit in-chief, and not a single one of them spoke a nice word about him. Most were resigned to him acting like a massive CUNT because of the 2-week holiday every month along with the pay rate. They also told me every complaint only fell on deaf ears, provoked retaliation, and again, his relationship with the client made him nigh untouchable. This is when I started recording everything, and did so with these 2 assumptions. 1, the company would only act with serious proof of malfeasance, and 2, his acts of bastardry would only escalate. Neither assumption proved false. I had nearly 3 months of audio tapes of him being his regular a-hole self before he went too far. About a week into the shift, I showed up to our station and was called into his office, only to be informed I was being let go, and my replacement would be there in a few hours. I was to go back to our accommodations, pack my stuff up, and report back there. Well, shit, I thought before doing as I was bidden. Upon arriving back to the office with my suitcases, this sadist started laughing and said, "No one's coming to replace you. You're so effing gullible." It was a mock firing, and I'm sure he feverishly jacked himself off to it later that night. I was livid and let loose on him, finally ending a tirade with a malicious hint. Can you imagine what the office would do if they could have heard all this BS? Unrepentant to the last, he coldly stared at me before replying, "Can you imagine what they would do if a bunch of empty beer cans turned up as I told the office I saw you drinking?" Having recorded all of this, and knowing my glorious victory was assured, I feigned capitulation to carry on with my day. My first day off, I sent a detailed letter to the company along with recordings, and as expected, they fired his ass. What came after was righteous cackling laughter for hours. I wonder how this Napoleon felt after winning Austerlitz. TLDR recorded my supervisor threatening my job and creating a hostile work environment. Sent recordings to my company, and he was fired. And there you have it, folks. The end of today's stories. If you liked them, be sure to leave a like on the video, as well as make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. That way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. As always, my name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.